Hey guys, back at it here again. This time, kind of taking a pause with our Steve Vai album review series and ranking series for the albums and everything, because we are going to be doing another ranking of the franchise. Just like a couple weeks ago when I ranked all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and then eventually, I think like a week later, ranked all the appearances and the makeup of Freddy and everything. Well, and in that video, if you watch those, I said I would kind of be doing that with other franchises, mainly horror ones, because I'm a big horror movie fan. And, I'm not really going to be doing these at any, consistent, oh, I'm going to knock this one out this week and then this one the next. I've kind of just been going at it at my own pace, rewatching these movies that I love. I got a pretty big horror movie collection over here. And I've just kind of been rewatching the series. And just whenever I get done rewatching them for however many times I've ended up seeing them now, but I never get tired of rewatching some of my favorite franchises and everything. But yeah, just whenever I've kind of been getting done watching these, rewatching these series, I'll be doing these rankings of these here. And I'm not gonna end up doing like a sister video to this kind of with the ranking of Pinhead looks, because he's kind of the same except for the two different actors for the most part. But instead of that, there will be a ranking of every Cenobite. So that one should be pretty fun. I've not ever seen anybody do that on YouTube yet. Maybe wrong, but I think that would be a really fun one to do. So that'll kind of be the video that accompanies this one, kind of how the ranking the looks of Freddy accompanied the ranking of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and that'll come probably in a week or so after this video. So just stay tuned for that one. But without further ado here, we've got 10 movies to go through. This is definitely a series that people, a lot of people that I talk to, who are just, not really like horror movie fans, but they like some horror movies and stuff. They don't really know that I'd say a good 3/4 of these even exist. The first three were the only ones in theaters. Then there was part 4. That once they got to part 4, they started going straight to VHS, or even the newest one, Judgment, went straight to digital. And then we've got, and then they started recycling scripts and stuff, starting with Inferno and ending with Hellworld. So there's a lot of crazy controversial stuff that's gone down in this franchise. But with that being said, we'll go and kick it off here. Which, if you guys know this franchise, you know what's coming. My number 10 spot, my least favorite, Hellraiser Revelations. I mean, look at him. He's saying cheese here. Look at me. I cannot stand this guy's Pinhead. I mean, it is awful. This is like a really, really shitty fan film, is what this is. And it's not only one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen, it's just one of the worst movies I've ever seen, period. The acting is awful. And I don't mind cheesy acting, in the 80s and stuff like this, or stuff like that, but this is just beyond bad. I mean, oh my god. And this came out in 2011. This is the 9th entry in the series. At this point, pretty much, whoever it was who owned the rights, I'm drawing a blank here, I think it was Dimension, yeah, they were threatened, hey, if you guys don't make something with Pinhead or Hellraiser, you guys are going to get them rights, they're going to expire or something of that nature. So pretty much they pumped out this garbage movie really fast. And, I guess it wasn't a recycled script like some of the other movies, but that doesn't matter. I mean, I've only seen this movie twice. And somehow during this most recent, watch through all these movies again, it somehow was even worse than the first time I watched it. So this is just absolute dog shit of a movie. It's I'm just sitting there the whole time oh my god. I mean, you've got Pinhead up in the attic just pacing the whole time. You got this weird found footage kind of thing going on that doesn't really work, because they just kind of stop with that. Then the dude kind of taking his buddy's body, and then he wants to, it gets really weird. The whole family situation, they're all in the house gathered up, and the power goes out, so they immediately think that someone's breaking in the house and that someone's cut the power. Immediately think that. And it's just it's just an absolute freaking mess. And then Oh my God! Once the guy reveals that he's like in his body, that he's in the other, his friend's body. He's carrying around a gun with all these like just awful, awful lines. Just a terrible, terrible movie. I mean, even like the other Cenobites. I mean, I guess Chatterer came back, but like there was like a second Pinhead pretty much that sucked. Like, get more creative. One of the worst movies I've ever freaking seen. So that's why number 10 is Hellraiser Revelations. I mean, there's no surprise there if you guys know about this series. Then number 9 will be the 8th entry in the series. We're talking about Hellraiser, Hellworld, Evil Goes Online. Yeah, it's the 8th one in the series, and this one came out in 2005. You've got, a young Henry Cavill up in here. I don't know if it was his first movie or not, but definitely one of his earlier flicks he appeared in. And just a weird concept, trying to kind of be meta, that whole thing, making it like, oh, Hellraiser's a actual movie and all that stuff, and kind of realizing that and trying to make it feel more like the real world. So these kids play this online game, they go to this party, and the party's really weird. They meet this really creepy dude who's kind of following them around. Next thing you know, all the Cenobites are actually here at this party and are killing off these kids, and, well, I call them kids. They're like, probably around my age, to be honest. But, and they're, but yeah, then, there's the big twist of like, oh, well, guess what? Turns out they're all in these coffins, and they've been given these hallucinogens or something to make them see all this and put pipes, and they're out so they can still breathe and stay alive, and this guy's buried them alive for revenge of his son that they were friends with, who, like, killed himself, or really was probably killed by the Cenobites, Pinhead and the Cenobites, while playing the online game or something. It's absolutely insane. So pretty much it's like, oh, this is meta. Pinhead and the Cenobites aren't real. Just kidding, they are real. Just kidding, no, they're not. And then you get the big surprise that, oh, they actually are, because then they kill the guy who played it. So it's like a constant just freaking mind game this thing's playing. I mean, it's boring as hell throughout this weird party thing, really weird vibe going on. It's got a couple of cool scenes in it with, obviously Doug Bradley. This was the last one he actually appeared in as Pinhead, so, but, when you get him as Pinhead, there's going to be some badass stuff going on, and there were some pretty cool kills, just like some of those torture devices and everything, but yeah, other than that, this is just an awful movie. This is not one I like to go back to at all. It's boring, and the concept is it's garbage. I'm not a fan of this at all. And again, this is just my opinion. If you guys happen to like those two or any of the other ones I kind of put low, that's cool. If you guys find some enjoyment out of them, all power to you. But then we've got number 8 here, talking about the 7th one in the series, Hellraiser Deader. And this one actually came out just a couple months before Hellworld, so they were just rushing these things out. Again, a recycled script from the studio. Same with Hellworld. And this one, it's got a really, really cool concept. I'll give it that. The whole reporter thing that's kind of been done before in the 3rd entry in the series. So the investigative journalist kind of thing, and it had kind of been done, but they did get the concept of like, oh, there's this cult who's kind of into, cheating death and everything, and are kind of cheating Pinhead and the Cenobites and everything, and, so that's kind of a cool thing going on, but it's just so poorly done. I mean, there's these weird train sequences that are just like, what the hell's going on, and it's all over the place, and it's boring as hell. This is another one that just bores me, and that's worse than, except in Revelation's case, that's just ultra bad. But to me, like, I would rather, like, at least be entertained, like, a little bit than just be straight up bored. Like, I'd rather, be able to laugh through, like, a really shitty movie than to be bored through one. But Revelations is just way beyond. That's like saying, if that's below these two, that's saying how bad that is, because these two are really, really freaking boring. But that one, Revelations is too, though. So all these are pretty boring entries down here so far. But yeah, anyways, this cult thing, it's just not really realized to its fullest potential, I think, because there are some really cool scenes with like that dead corpse in that apartment, and then you got the whole you got the really, really cool kill at the end with like the chains going through everybody. I thought that was really badass, and the people in the cult all look pretty creepy, But then it's like it's just so all over the place because they're going to this train. Oh, she's chasing down this dude. Sees him jump in front of a train. She's got some problems with her dad. She wakes up in a mental hospital. Wakes up bleeding everywhere. I mean, it's just like it's so freaking all over the place. It's hard to even follow at times. But it does get points ahead of Hellworld because the concept was at least cool. And like Hellworld, it does have a couple cool scenes. When you get Doug Bradley's Pinhead, who's a freaking badass on the screen, he's gonna slay it every time. So whenever he does appear, and this is one of the ones he appears in the least, actually. I mean, he's barely in this thing. I mean, you kind of get a couple of the other Cenobites appearing every now and then, but like, he's just, I mean, the only main memorable scene he's in is the end. I think he appears maybe once, maybe twice more in the middle, but other than that, he's not really in this at all. And just a movie that just really failed, in my opinion, that could have been really awesome. All right. And now number 7 here. And this might surprise some people considering, like, as far as how known this one actually is to people and everything, but number 7 for me is Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. And I know that one is like one of the more well-known ones out of them, like especially I know people who know this one, you know, a lot more. I know more people that know this one than I do who know any of those like in-between ones. But this one, it's definitely a ton cornier than like the first 2 Hellraisers with their serious tone. So this one kind of has like a fun feel to it, and I do like this movie. This was the last one shown in theaters. It kind of has like that big cinematic feel to it. It's got that going on. You got Ozzy and Motorhead in the soundtrack singing Hellraiser. You got Armored Saint in the soundtrack. So it's got a really badass soundtrack, and it just felt really Hollywood. You know, Pinhead's in New York, and there's some, but like there's just some really weird moments that are just kind of make you cringe a little bit. Like with, you know, he's like whenever the dude, the main like guy who owns a nightclub or whatever, says like Jesus Christ, and Pinhead's like not quite. I mean, that's really badass. But then everybody kind of starts saying not quite. Like you catch people saying that a lot, like they're copying him or something. And it's really weird. Then the Cenobites are a pretty major problem here too. I mean, that camera head guy, I do not like him. The doc, and he's just making his little jokes or whatever. Pretty freaking lame. I don't like the cigarette burn girl Cenobite. That's freaking lame too. I mean, really gonna chase somebody and burn them with cigarettes? Like, come on. I do kind of like, weirdly enough, I do kind of like the guy who shoots CDs out of his head because he kind of looks cool. And the barbed wire one looks cool. The piston head one is awful. Pinhead has some freaking great moments in here though. Like when he's at the altar and, you know, puts like takes the pins out with the worms and puts them in his hands. And then says like, I am the way. And like then the fire goes up from the candles. That's a classic scene in the series. And, you know, then there's the kind of boring stuff with like the main character. Her dad was like in the army and everything. And that is pretty lame. Like I don't really, that just kind of loses me there. Honestly, anytime they're kind of trying to make Pinhead a little bit of a good guy, I'm like, whatever, you know, and kind of show his human side. I'm not really all for that. But, yeah, this is just a freaking, it's a solid movie. It's not my favorite, obviously, because it, you know, it ranks down here at number 7. But it is a solid movie. You know, came out in, 1992, I think? So this was like the first one of the 90s. But anyways, yeah, we'll move on here. And from here on, it does get, this middle section does kind of get tough here for me as far as the rankings go. But number 6 is going to have to be the newest one here, Hellraiser Judgment. And this one does have a different Pinhead, different guy playing Pinhead, but guess what? He actually does a really awesome job. I mean, he looks freaky. I mean, that's pretty imposing looking. And he's kind of got a different outfit, a little bit more of a robe, and has like this throne and everything. And you get like these guys right here who aren't really Cenobites, but they're like the Auditor and the Butcher and the Surgeon. So sadly, those guys, they won't be able to be ranked on my Cenobites video whenever I rank all of them because they're not Cenobites. Oh, I thought they were, but I was looking it up. But anyways, yeah, this movie, it's pretty freaking awesome. I was super impressed. It's actually ranked higher than this before. But upon this rewatch in the series, I kind of just decided to throw it down a couple spots. But this, I mean, I caught it like when it first dropped on like Netflix or whatever in like 2018, and man, I was just like, finally, because it had been 7 years since Revelations that was just a freaking disaster, and then we get this movie, and I think this is a great movie. I love the detective thing, even though it had been done before. Again, kind of a reused concept here. They kind of did the same thing as Inferno, um, and you know, I love how like the cops, their kind of dynamic thing going on in here. And what's really fun is if after you've seen this movie once, and if, upon like rewatches and stuff, you see more of like, oh, I see how that main cop, spoiler alert, was one of the villains. Was the main villain. Serial killer, killing everybody, because kind of how he keeps quoting like the Bible and these books and everything. So you really start to kind of pick up on that. So I think that's pretty cool, and like gives this some definite rewatch value. But I love the new characters they introduced, and like the angel who banished Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. How she came in there, and then Pinhead gives her the crown of thorns with his pins. I mean, that is just badass. And then you get like that dude who like eats the paper and like pukes out. I mean, there's some pretty gross stuff in here, pretty disturbing imagery. But that's what Hellraiser's about. And this is just a solid movie. I think it's a great watch, and I have fun every time I pop it on. And I think it's a good stopping point thus far for the series. I know we're getting a remake and everything coming up probably this year, but I mean, I think this is a good like last entry as of now. But anyways, then we'll move on to the other kind of detective one here. Number 5, halfway point here. This one came out, I think 2000. The first one of the 2000s, Inferno. And this one did the detective thing. It did it first, and it did it better, I think. Got a really cool cover there. I really like that. You get some really cool Cenobites, some new ones with like the Wire twins up there. At least I think they were new in this one. And you get like this kind of gritty cop story, and kind of corrupt cop story. And this one was the first one with the recycled scripts. But you know what? Regardless of that, they flip it into a Hellraiser movie, and it's a damn good one. I think it's another great movie. I love kind of the whole mind games and like the psychology of this whole thing, and how like just the twists and turns with the detectives and his partner, and you just see how screwed up of a guy he is, and all like the shady stuff he's into. And one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, especially upon a rewatch here, I've seen this movie several times, but like this one's always kind of stood out to me. This scene is where the guy Terry, or they're talking about this guy Terry who had an encounter with the engineer, who's like the serial killer in this one, pretty much. He wears like a chatterer looking mask, or is like a chatterer kind of. It's kind of hard to because it turns out to be, the main character's own personal hell. But anyways, yeah. So I love the scene where they're describing this guy's encounter and how he was mailing this guy Terry like his wife's fingers and stuff. And that whole scene and like flashback stuff just kind of gives it like a really creepy feel. Then there's some really out of nowhere stuff like those cowboys, like them kung fu cowboys come out of nowhere in that one scene and start, kicking his ass. Some really weird stuff, but I love them Wired twins and how they start sticking their fingers into his chest and rubbing. I mean, it's just creepy stuff. The Chatterer torso. Pinhead doesn't appear that much in this one, but when he does, it's it's freaking memorable stuff. Like with the whole like icy or like the whole snowy kind of scene at the end. But yeah, it turns out main character is in his own personal hell. And he's going to keep living the cycle over and over again. The same day is kind of his hell. The same freaking nightmare of a day. And we find that out because, he kind of wakes up. It's like, oh, it's all a dream or whatever, a nightmare. But then he like gets the same phone call from that hooker, and he blows his head off, wakes up, and here we are again. It's like he's stuck in this loop of just endless chaos. And I just think that's really cool, and how you kind of, it's definitely a cool, reveal on your first watch. And it's just really fun to kind of see, kind of like with Judgment, kind of the hints toward that upon rewatches. So, great movie here. I've never really had problems with that one. Here we go. Number 4 here, I'm going to go with Hellseeker. Came out in 2002. This one saw the return of Kirsty, which I thought was super cool. And, we got to see her back at it again. And we get a lot of Pinhead in this one. And, man, he does just some cool freaking stuff in here. And this kind of just follows another, like, really screwed up guy. And he's, again, kind of going through his own personal hell, and kind of paying for what he did to Kirsty and screwed her over. She made a deal. What it turns out is she made a deal with Pinhead to take, his soul, open the box and took his soul because she was planning to kill him, or he was planning to kill her and take her family fortune or something with his buddy, and it kind of hints to that. But and there's also kind of a little bit of that detective stuff going on, trying to get down to some of these killings going on. But that's not like the main kind of thing. It's like, you're not following a detective or a case. You're looking at the suspect. So it's kind of cool, a cool role reversal there. I love the scenes, whenever, one of my favorite scenes, it even shows it kind of on the back there, kind of right there, where he's on this, what do you call it, acupuncture, laying flat down, and Pinhead appears behind him, pulls out one of the needles, and just stabs him right through the throat, and then he wakes up. Love that. And I love, when he wakes up, or, blink, kind of comes to his senses, and then we'll see, oh my god, someone's dead here, and, he killed him, and it just looks shady as all get out. And then, everything he keeps kind of imagining is just, it's just driving him nuts, but it's turning out to be reality, it's, as far as, them dying and everything. And, his whole work thing where everybody's kind of watching him just kind of gives us a really weird vibe. But I love, love, love the tie-in here with, Kirsty coming back. That really did it for me. And just, again, I don't know if you call them kills because, again, it's kind of a personal hell situation here again. But, just the cool, scenes where there's some gore going on, another one whenever the girl was kind of in the chair, trying to make out with him or whatever. When kind of how she ended up was crazy. But definitely that acupuncture scene sticks out to me. And just, again, super cool to have Kirsty back. I wouldn't mind having her come back for another one. That seems to kind of be a trend now of horror movies going on right now. Bringing Laurie Strode back in the new Halloweens. And then looks like the new Texas Chainsaw is going to be bringing back the original girl from there, Sally or whatever. So it's kind of, maybe they shouldn't do that. But yeah, Hellseeker's a great movie with lots of Pinhead and Cenobite action in it. So always have loved that one. All right. Top 3 here. Number 3, we are looking at Bloodline. This top 3 can, especially number 3, number 2. Man, they were really, really hard to decide here. But Bloodline, man, in 1994, I think, is when this one dropped, if I'm not mistaken. It's either 94 or 96. Let me see here. Well, not really seeing it on the back here, but either way, it was I think almost 100% it was 1994. But this one has a super cool story going on with it. This was the first one not to go, not to hit theaters. That would kind of start that, and they've not hit theaters since. But so this one follows the bloodline of the guy, Le Marchant, or however you say his name, who created the box. And so you get a good third of the movie in kind of the old time, the 1800s or whatever, with the guy who built it for this this British English thespian or whatever, and he's doing some satanic stuff, trying to summon demons and all. And you see Angelique, who's one of my favorite characters in the series, that demon who possessed that body of that sacrifice victim. And you get to see her in action here. And then you see the next kind of generation there later on, about the middle half really, kind of in for them modern times, in the 90s or whatever, with him building the whole building that the architecture inside looks like the box and everything, and kind of see how he has flashbacks of his from his ancestors and everything. And when Pinhead and Angelique and the Cenobites come out to play during that middle half, it's badass. Pinhead's out here, even has his kid. He's like, I'll do whatever it takes, just to get that box. He the kind of battle in that midsection there is awesome. Like, it's pretty crazy having Pinhead almost act like a slasher in a way, walk around that apartment, going around the corners, and just hiding out, and then doing whatever it takes, holding his freaking kid hostage, and wanting to kill his wife, all to get that box. So it's really cool seeing him. You see Pinhead probably the most in this movie, which is a huge plus for me. But yeah, this one then it ends up in space, which sounds like, oh my god, another horror movie in space or whatever, like take the slasher to space. But no, this actually fits because it's going through these timelines. So you're up in the space station that ends up being like a whole box in of itself that like turns into it and is able to stop Pinhead. And there's some really cool scenes on there with the chattering dog, and they make those security guards the twins. So there's some really, really cool stuff in here. I love this movie. It's an absolute blast all the way through. I really wish this one was more known. At least, I wish this one would have at least made theaters, because I feel like more people would actually like this one, or if they knew about it and would watch it. Because, I mean, again, even whenever I first ever was gonna go watch through these movies, and I heard about Bloodline being in space, I was like, oh no. But like as soon as I watched it, I was like, this really isn't weird. It kind of it goes with the story well, and they don't take it like too over the top or anything. So, absolute blast of a movie, one of my favorites, and it almost made that number 2 spot, just barely. But I had to give that number 2 spot to Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. My God, this one's been my favorite before at a time. This picks up right, where we left off pretty much on the original here, Kirsty in the hospital and everything. And they think she's nuts pretty much for all the stuff that went down in part 1. And she's trying to tell them, the detective and the doctors and everything. And man, things just go wild from there. You get the evil doctor who has apparently been collecting boxes and knows all about this lore. Has one of the goriest scenes. The gore in this one's amazing. But yeah, it's got some of the goriest scenes, like whenever the doctor takes like that mental patient who cuts himself open, and like thinks there's bugs on his skin. You even see it some parts where he's like from his eyes seeing the bugs on his skin. Lays him in the middle of this mattress where Julia died in the first one. So you're seeing him cut off his own flesh. Then Julia comes out, her freaking body that's just no skin, just pure muscle and tissue. And just climbs out, like absorbs him, and man, and then they start, going to town pretty much with collecting the bodies to get her back to her full form, which is another cool stuff. But really, it picks back up, really, really picks up whenever they go to hell, where there's Leviathan and all these different creepy rooms and imagery. You got the room with Frank in there. Oh, and also the kind of sidekick girl going around here playing a part, where, she's like a puzzle solver, whatever. You get to see a little bit of her backstory. Some of the imagery with her, how the doctor was like, seemingly, it's kind of, I'm not really sure still not exactly sure what was going on with her and the doctor's relationship and the mother's relationship, but, apparently something nefarious going on. But the imagery of like that baby going on with like the stitched eyes and mouth, and there's like a clown, and just some really trippy imagery. And Pinhead's like, enjoy hell, go explore it. And you get Chatterer 2 joining the club as a Cenobite, different actor for the female Cenobite. The doctor, goes crazy and starts trying to take over hell down there, and gets that big, Leviathan attached to his head. It's kind of like a final villain. Takes out all the Cenobites. So stuff is just nuts in here. And Julia's roaming around hell too, causing chaos. So this is just an absolute blast of a movie. Again, with a ton of gore. You get to see kind of the origin of Pinhead. I'm fine with that, seeing the origin of and him without his makeup and the origin part. But again, I've never really been a fan of them kind of trying to, make him out to be kind of a hero or anything like that. And it's not like a major killer, because obviously I love this movie. I think it's great. But, that's just one of the things I'm like, I could do without. But again, just one of the best horror movie sequels, that picks up right after of all time, in my opinion. Love, love, love Hellbound. But Process of Elimination, and I mean, this is really the most common one you find that people know, and that's at the top of their list. We're talking about the original Hellraiser. And I'll tell you what, I've seen this movie so many times. I just love it every time. And I'll never forget, like, whenever I was first ever was gonna watch through this series, which is, several years ago. I always thought that, oh, Pinhead is like some slasher guy, chase you around. Man, whenever I first ever watched this though, I was surprised. It was like just this story-driven, gore fest with Frank coming out of the attic with that heart pumping. You see his bones and him, come back, and Julia being freaking weird and creepy and killing the dudes. And you get some scenes of the Cenobites up in here. The best scenes ever with Pinhead and the Cenobites in just the white room, like in the hospital, and with the attic at the end. Some of the best quotes ever from Pinhead. You'll tear your soul apart. Just love that, and I love the story going on here. Just really some really screwed up shit going on. With the way Julia's was messing around with her husband, even on her wedding week or whatever. Was messing around on her husband with his own brother. He was just a really screwed up dude, and he's coming back to life. And I love the ending sequence of this. When Kirsty comes home and kind of sees there's been some stuff going on. This is after she found out about Frank and tries to tell her dad, and Frank had taken the dad's body and everything, and Frank goes crazy enough to and kills Julia. Doesn't even care. And then of course you get the scene finally in the attic where Frank gets the hooks in his face and Jesus wept and they pull his skin off. And then Kirsty's all surprised. She's like, okay, like, why are you guys after me? I thought we made this deal. And Pinhead and the Cenobites are like, we said maybe. And then, they wanted her. So they started coming after her. And you get one of the creepiest things ever. Chatterer, I don't know why this always creeped me out, but right when Chatterer appears, he just sticks his fingers in her mouth. And that's just like, what the hell? But it's like creepy. And I love all the gang in here, so then you just get that really cool final sequence of the house just tearing down everything and her throwing the box at him. But even though I do love a lot of Pinhead in the movies, because he's not like constantly throughout this one, maybe like in Bloodline or anything. But I honestly think Pinhead is best, kind of how he is in like most of the movies. As just like a spectacle you see, maybe like in a good 3 or 4 scenes, max. And like, or even like, I think he's maybe in 3 like sections of the movie here, overall, but they're like lengthy ones and very impactful ones because, obviously they were impactful enough to make him a freaking icon and one of my favorite horror icons and villains of all time. And Kirsty, and here's one of my favorite final girls. She just kind of kicks ass, throughout the movie. So, but yeah, guys, I mean, this is an all-time classic. I'm sure it was to no surprise this was probably going to be at number 1. Usually it's either 1 or 2, I see. Hell, I've even seen probably part 3 be at someone's number 1. I think that's cool, too. My dad thinks Bloodline is the best. That's his favorite, and I think that's cool, too. But, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this kind of crazy and controversial series. It's kind of had a wild run throughout its history, and all kinds of twists and turns and different types of stories go on with it. But yeah, it's one of my favorite horror franchises. As you can tell, I really only don't like 3 of these movies. I think the majority of them are great, and I think part 3 is good. But I mean, you talk about 5-star classics. That's 1, 2, and 4 for me. I mean, those 2 are just like the peak of the Hellraiser franchise. And now I hear we're getting I've heard actually like a year or so ago we were getting the remake going on, and they're going to make Pinhead a girl, and that kind of bothered me at first, like a lot. But then, I heard, oh, well, I guess that's how he actually was in the books. Pinhead was a girl, and that doesn't make me all of a sudden accept it all the way through, because, we're so used to him. But then now I'm like thinking, where do you go, with this, as crazy as this franchise has been? So maybe it is good to just get a complete fresh start with something totally different. Because Doug Bradley ain't going to come back and do it after, all the kind of chaos that went down with this series. He said he's not coming back to do Pinhead ever. So we're not going to see him again. So I think it maybe be a good thing to kind of get a fresh, clean start, and maybe it being a girl, we won't get we don't have to have her getting compared to like Doug Bradley's Pinhead or anything. And I think it's going to go straight to Hulu or something like that. but I will be a freaking watcher, and I'll be a buyer of that thing as soon as it comes out. I'm really excited for it, and I do have some high hopes for it. I mean, I'm always excited when a new entry in one of my favorite franchises comes out. So, with that being said, though, guys, yeah, let me know your Hellraiser rankings in the comments and what you think about these movies, or if you've even heard or seen a lot of these, because I know a lot of them are pretty obscure. But with that being said, yeah, next week, like I said, we'll be doing I'll be ranking every Cenobite. There's quite a bit, throughout the series if you've seen a lot of them. So it'll be really fun doing that, and kind of a tough one to make. But we'll knock it out. We'll get that going next week, and then next time you guys see me, we'll be doing hopping right back into that Steve Vai album review series. That's not stopping. Just this is kind of just a little pit stop along the way, kind of like I did when I ranked the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and that sort of thing. Just kind of a side thing we're doing. But yeah, so next time, a little bit later this week, probably midweek, end of the week, we'll be looking at Fire Garden from Steve Vai. So stay tuned for that. And again, I would love to talk about these down there in the comments and see what you guys think. So anyways, thanks guys, and